Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. Do want to mention again the national TV show, Price of Business show at priceofbusiness.com. You can learn more about it in 1/3 of the homes around the country. U.S. Senator Rand Paul, he's on this Sunday. Interesting interview, one of his last interviews before the vote in Iowa, and we're delighted to have it. And he went deep. He gave us 3 segments for that interview, and so we're excited about that. Another great guy that I'm excited about getting on the TV show, we're going to plan on having him on sometime in February, is our guest this segment for the radio program, Chris Corso, and he is with the Corso Law Group. That's Corso Law Group, CORSO.com. Chris, always glad to have you on. Love what you do. I think that you bring a great civil liberties component that's so crucial, so necessary in our business life today, in our civil life today. Talk a little bit about your practice. I know you have offices both in Arizona and in Texas, and he's also a regular writer now over at usdailyreview.com, the national news website, and so we consider him an authority in the area of law. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate being here. I appreciate the kind words. I don't think I'm as great as you're saying, but thank you. I appreciate you saying
well, we like you a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, no, we have a criminal practice, as you say, in Arizona and Texas, and, handle cases all the way from traffic all the way up to, higher felonies, a lot of things, some civil type work, which we're going to talk about today, some forfeiture issues. But, we tend to bring a different approach to the criminal practice, where I always say we represent the person, not the client, and the family, and we gear towards a lot of education and making clients understand what's happening before they sometimes get railroaded, so to speak.
Yeah, no question about it. Okay, let's talk about forfeiture. I mean, we're familiar with that. I've driven in a friend of mine who had a great car that, guess what, was acquired through forfeiture. He got it at an auction, and that is a huge revenue source for governments. Talk a little bit. Give us an overview of what forfeiture is all about.
Yeah, Kevin, this is where you have a situation, and now there are 2 types of forfeiture. There's criminal and there's civil. What we're talking about is civil.
Oh, okay.
So in civil forfeiture, I'll give you an example. That's the easiest way. If you're in an airport, say, and you're carrying a high number, some cash on you. Let's say you're carrying $20,000, let's say, and they have an idea that that's happening. You go through security. They can stop you. They can seize that money because they may feel that it's linked to some sort of criminal activity, maybe some drug trafficking, things like that, without even being charged with a crime or potentially being charged with a crime. They seize that money, and now you have to go through a great deal of hurdles to try to get that back. And you have to basically prove to them that wasn't linked to any type of criminal activity. Mm-hmm. This is civil forfeiture. In a nutshell, that's basically what it is through an example.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so, it kind of almost reeks of a lack of due process if you think about it.
Oh, it does. I mean, I can't tell you. I've handled many, many of these cases. It really does, because with criminal, there has to be, you got the copy for the horse sort of with this. You have to have some sort of activity, some sort of charge. They take the property that's linked to the crime. Say there's a drug case and or a weapons case, and the your vehicle was used to transport it. Well, now that vehicle becomes part of evidence, basically, in a criminal matter. Well, in civil, there is no due process. They're taking the property and they're making you. The burden is on you. It's not the other way around. And it's such we could talk about that. Such a low standard for them to keep it.
Yeah, and a very high standard to get it back.
No, very, very. I mean, in criminal practice, everybody knows beyond a reasonable doubt. They have to prove that you did this beyond a reasonable doubt. Well, in this situation, 51% basically preponderance of the evidence, they can keep it. And the problem, Kevin, with this is the procedure by which they do this is very, very complicated. And so the huge problem with it is there's no charge. no charges yet. So you're not sure. These people are not sure where to file a proper motion or a request with a court to get this back, because there is no court yet. There is no case. So who do you send this to? Who do you ask to get the property back? And it's done intentionally because you have time limits that you have to ask for this back. And if you blow the time limit, you lose the property. That's why you're able to get cars and things that you're talking about for pretty cheap.
Yeah,
you know?
Well, it's unbelievable, actually. It's unbelievable. Talk about how Texas fares compared to other states when it comes to this.
Yeah, I mean, Texas averages about $41 million in forfeitures each year, which is, the Justice Institute has given, if you want to talk about grades, given Texas a D-, basically. So what they're saying is Texas they're doing this a lot, and they're seizing a lot of property and keeping a lot of it. And people just aren't aware of what to do, But Texas is pretty high up on the list of states that, it's difficult to get your property back, and they're seizing a lot.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. How? What kind of? What states have a good grade, or do any states?
None of them are really good. None of them are really good. You tend to see the more the liberal states take less and make it a little easier to get back. But the conservative states are, they're wanting to keep that, and they're making it as difficult as possible to do. Yeah. So I have a client that likes to deal in vintage cars. He's an old timer, and he loves to deal in cash, even though I keep telling him to stop doing that, and he'll travel across the country with, large sums of money, and this has happened to him several times in several different states. And it always seems to be Texas and Arizona where it's difficult to get this money back. But of course he doesn't listen to me, but this is what's happening, yeah. But Texas is a high number. They keep a lot of money.
And any final thoughts as we wrap up the segment? And by the way, it's Corso, C-O-R-S-O, lawgroup.com. And by the way, we've got a great new article featured right now over there at U.S. Daily Review on transportation about trucking that should scare the heck out of you, that Chris contributed to, wrote, in fact, over there at usdailyreview.com. That includes some great content from our show. But any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
Yeah, Kevin, I'm very much against this happening with the government doing this, and I would just say that you just have to be careful. You can't carry large sums of money anymore, which I feel is so un-American. But don't do this by yourself. If something like this happens, you need to get help, because they're going to keep your property. And they, even though the Department of Justice is trying to curb this a bit, they're failing in every area. So this is the kind of thing we have to be very careful about, some of the property that you're carrying around and the parents that you're giving to people.
Chris Corso, check him out over there at CorsoLawGroup.com, also at PriceOfBusiness.com and our other media. Thanks so much, sir. When we come back, much more for you. I do want to remind you the show continues 24/7 at PriceOfBusiness.com, and this is The Price of Business.